I am here on video up at my cabin in Montgomery. It's a Saturday evening, not real good weather, so I can't really do much outside, so I figured I'd make a video. But the reason that I'm making this video is because I'm a veterinarian, and lately I have been seeing a ton of just vet bashing on the internet, like on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok, on Instagram, just bashing veterinarians, just calling us greedy, money hungry, bashing vaccines, bashing food, just bashing everything. And it seems like it's getting worse. So I felt compelled to at least make some sort of a public service announcement, because a lot of people don't know, but our industry is actually suffering from one of the highest suicide rates probably amongst most of the industries. I had a class of 128 people that I graduated with in 2000, and we've already lost 3 of our classmates to suicide. And that's not unique, sadly. I feel like something has to change, and I think part of that is you guys understanding why things are the way they are. There's a crisis in the industry as far as a shortage of vets, there's a shortage of staff. There's a lot of pets, tons and tons of people got dogs and cats over COVID. People aren't having kids, they're having dogs and cats now, which is great for us. But the industry is still super short-staffed and super overworked and super stressed, and we're not paid like you think we are. I drive an 11-year-old truck. Could I get a new truck? Probably. Do I want to have a $1,200 a month payment? No. So I'm going to keep driving my truck for as long as I can. But I think one of the things that started my rant is a video that I saw shared. It was a guy who ended up at an urgent vet because his dog, I guess something happened to it, and he was there. And he was just trashing the clinic about the cost of everything and about what they were doing, their treatment plans. And he was a human doctor. And so he was trying to compare what it would cost if those same people, dogs, came to him, and what it would cost, what it wouldn't cost, what he would do. And it was just ridiculous. The comparison between human medicine and veterinary medicine is not even comparable, because human medicine is subsidized by insurance. People have insurance. So when he says an x-ray costs $40, that's because the other $380 of it is covered by insurance. That's not the case in veterinary medicine with anything. So yeah, he got rightfully bashed pretty hard, so I think he did actually come out with an apology, which is good. At least he acknowledged that. I think he opened up a can of worms. My name is Dr. Steve Pelton. I have been a veterinarian for 25 years. I think I have a little bit of experience in the industry. I graduated in 2000, and then I went to work for a very large VCA. There was 15 doctors when I started. I got to see a lot of cool stuff, got to learn a ton, and eventually I became the medical director there. I was the youngest medical director VCA had at the time, I believe. Did that for a couple of years. As a medical director, you're responsible for overseeing the other doctors, you're responsible for the financials of the clinic, costs, profits, client complaints, making sure the health protocols are in place. So I learned a ton. I got to see the good and the bad of corporate medicine and just the financials of it all and how profit-driven corporate medicine is. We'll talk about that whole thing in a little bit, because what you guys are saying about the corporate takeovers is 100% true. 100%. Real quick, food. All of you guys bashing food. I get it. Processed, dry kibble. You guys call it garbage. That's fine. You can call it garbage. Maybe it isn't. I think some of them are fine. If you want to cook home-cooked food for your dog, that's great. I would love it if my clients cooked home-cooked food. But you got to remember that just cooking up a little bit of chicken and rice and throwing in some broccoli, that's not a balanced food. That's not a balanced diet. There's actually a lot that goes into making a good balanced diet for a dog and for especially for a cat. So if you want to do it the right way, that's fine. You just have to research and make sure that you get all the right ingredients. There's some stuff you have to add in there. That's fine. But let's be real. Do the vast majority of human adult people cook for themselves healthy? I'm going to say probably no. So yeah, worked there as a medical director for 3 years, got just fed up. And then in 2007, I ended up coming across a great opportunity to purchase the clinic that I now own, Hearthstone Animal Clinic. It's in the Houston, Copperfield area. It's literally just a single doctor, me, and then I have a real small staff, just a receptionist and 2 techs. We run super lean, but super efficient, but we're super busy. I have a lot of clients, a lot of patients, but I'm family owned. I'm me owned. I'm not corporate owned. I'm not private equity owned. I take care of everything myself. So that's good. And sadly, there's not very many clinics. There's not very many veterinarians left like that because, as you guys have started pointing out, corporate private equity, absolutely 100% true. Corporate has been buying up clinics for the last 20 years, but especially over the last 10. And private equity jumped in probably in the last 5 to 7 years. The reason that veterinarians do sell to corporate, to private equity, it's not necessarily by choice. I don't think we want to give over our clinics to corporate. We don't want to give them to a VCA or Blue Pearl or an SVP or whatever, because we know what they're going to do. But when vets get older and they want to retire or they want to sell a practice that they've built up, there's not very many people like me that want to own a clinic. There's just not a lot of people that want to take on the responsibility of owning a clinic, running a clinic, the stress, the hours. It's a lot. And most people just don't want to do that. They want to just get a paycheck and not have to worry about all the other stuff, which is fine. I get it. So that leaves, when people want to try to sell their practice, that leaves 2 choices. You don't sell, which is stupid. The reason corporate and private equity were doing it and why people were doing it is because through COVID, they were paying these practice owners multiples of 10 to 15 times their EBITDA income, which is insane. That's a ton of money. So of course, a lot of people sold to corporate or private equity. Corporate, because they're going to be a VCA, they're going to be a Blue Pearl, they're going to be an SVP or whatever. Private equity, that's on the back end. You're not always going to know if it's private equity owned. With corporate and private equity, they always come in and they say, nothing's going to change. You guys are going to do everything just like you always have. But the first thing they do is they raise prices. They go through and they cut staff that maybe is getting paid too much, or they cut inventory or whatever they do. They change things. That's what they do, because they got to make the bottom line bigger so that they can turn around and then sell it for more money to somebody else. On the corporate side, those practices, they're just raising their prices. They're literally just going up and up. And I think finally they're reaching a point where they're just pricing themselves out to where people just can't afford it. And then they're having to make that tough choice between paying for their pet to get taken care of or not. And that's sad. And I hate to see it. I don't know what the answer is. As far as costs go, everybody says, oh, vets just rip you off. They just go in and charge you whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's not really the truth. I think 99% of the people in my profession, we're not in it for the money. We know we're not going to be making millions of dollars. We're not going to get rich. We try to make a living, and practice owners know that it's expensive. We have to charge to cover our costs and make some profit and pay people. I like to pay my staff well. I pay 100% of their health insurance. They get tons of perks. I think we have pretty cool equipment. Things are expensive. Just think about how much everything has gone up in cost just over the last 5 years, 6 years. I remember getting an air conditioning unit for my rental house, and the whole unit, a 2.5 ton unit, was $5-6 grand. I just had to get a new unit on another place recently, and it was double that, 12. So that's double. That's 100% increase in just 6 years. And I think we've all seen the same thing happening with all the vehicles. Try to find a nice used car for under 20 grand. Anyway, we know everything's getting more expensive. But let me give you some examples of costs that we have in a clinic, just a small clinic like mine. You start talking about those big clinics and it's multiples of 10. You need an x-ray unit to take x-rays. Good x-ray unit's going to cost you $60,000, $80,000. You got to add the digital component to it so that you can actually take digital x-rays. The digital x-ray unit and the processing and the software and all that stuff, that's going to easily cost you another 40 to 50 grand. Most clinics like to have a cold laser, class 4 therapy laser. That's going to cost you 40, I think it was about 40 grand. Surgery, right? You want your pets monitored while they're under so it's safe. Seems reasonable. A good anesthesia monitor that just literally just monitors blood oxygen, blood pressure, respiratory rate, ECG, just the basics. A simple one is going to cost you $6,000 to $8,000, and that's for one. Now, if you've got multiple doctors and you have multiple surgeries going on, you need 2 or 3. And then, well, you got to have people that take care of the animals while they're under. That's staff. So I have to pay the staff. So that's more money. And then, just as an example, for material, suture. I used to be able to get a box of suture, just simple suture that you use to sew up stuff when you're doing a spay. A box used to cost $90, maybe. We just ordered some the other day and it was $270 for the same exact suture. And that $90 was not that long ago. So everything's gone way up in price. And I have for a while, but I can't just keep eating that additional cost of the suture. And it's not just suture, it's the syringes, it's the drugs, it's everything. And that guy that was bashing the urgent vet clinic, comparing it to a human clinic, I think he forgets that he doesn't have any of the overhead expenses that we have. We have to carry all of our drugs, right? Got to carry pretty much in-house pharmacy, full pharmacy. I don't think they carry anything in human offices, or at least not much. We have to carry all of the flea and heartworm preventatives, especially here in Texas. So sitting up front, just in my little tiny lobby, just the basic flea, heartworm combos, NexGard combo, there's probably $50,000, $60,000 worth of inventory sitting up there, easy. And then in my fridge in the back, where the vaccines are, the Convenia, the Cytopoint, that's probably 50 grand sitting in that fridge, easy, just of inventory. So, to put things into perspective from a cost standpoint, the challenge that I have offered to several clients, nobody's ever taken me up on the offer, is if you will agree to pay 1 month, just 1 month of my expenses, not even all of my expenses, you don't even have to pay my salary, just cover my staff. I pay 100% of their health insurance, so you got to cover that. Cost of goods, my rent, and my utility bill. If you cover that for 1 month, I will give you free health care for the life of your dog, your cat. So far, nobody has taken me up on that offer when I've presented that to them. And that's just a small clinic. We do okay revenue, but it's not a big clinic. So there's a ton of overhead. And the profit margins are not what people probably think they are. So just keep that in mind. And as far as testing goes, you have to remember that when you bring a pet in that's sick, right? We can't just talk to it like that human dog in, and he can say, "Oh, hey, Mr. Steve, where's it hurting today?" "My wrist has been hurting me." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, okay." And then they inject it with steroids and give you some drugs or whatever. Animals can't do that. Those dogs and cats, they can't tell us where anything is hurting. They can't tell us what's wrong. So we have to go off of the symptoms that we're told. We have to go off of what we see, what we feel, what we hear. But even all of that only gives us an idea of what we might need. So we do have to do testing in order to figure out what's wrong with your pet. We can't just pick Fluffy up and shake her and go, "You know what? That sounds like it might be her liver. I think that could be her liver." That doesn't work. I wish it did, but it doesn't. So that means we have to do diagnostics. That's blood work, that's x-rays, ultrasounds, urine, and those cost money. And we're not just doing it to rip you off. We're doing it so that we can try to give you an answer for the reason that you may have brought your pet in. So just keep that in mind. Those all cost money. And also, remember, pet ownership is not a right. You're not entitled to own a dog or a cat. Owning a dog or a cat is a privilege, and it's a choice. If you choose to go and adopt a dog from a shelter, if you choose to go buy a pet from a breeder, a doodle, whatever it may be, you're taking on the responsibility of taking care of that dog or that cat for the rest of its life. Millennials and Gen Z, they're treating their dogs and cats more and more like family, kids, pet parents, which is great. That's great for the animals. It's great for the people. It's It's great for our industry. But you have to remember that's a responsibility. And with that responsibility comes cost. So you can't just get a dog from a shelter for free or for 30 bucks and then think that there's not going to be any other additional expenses throughout that pet's life. And if you choose to have 5 dogs or 6 or whatever, and if something bad happens to one of those dogs, let's say it gets hit by a car or whatever, and it ends up in an emergency clinic or an urgent vet, it needs a lot of work to save it. You have to decide if you're going to spend the money to save that pet. And it's not the clinic's fault. It's not the urgent vet clinic's fault that you have to spend that money to take x-rays, to do surgery. It's not the emergency clinic's fault if the dog got hit. Maybe it's yours. Why was your dog out? But stuff like that happens, so you have to be prepared to be able to take care of it. Now there's things that you can do, scratch pay, care credit, whatever. But you can't just sit there and vent and say, oh, they're just trying to rip me off and they're just trying to steal my money. They want tens of thousands of dollars to save my dog. Maybe it costs that much. Depends on where you are. California, for sure. Houston, Texas, maybe not. But things cost money. Everything costs money. Everything's gone way up in price. Food, housing, rent. I know why. Oh yeah, let's talk about vaccines for a second. Everybody's saying, oh, don't take your pets to get the vaccines. That's just a scam. They're just causing cancer and they're killing your pets and blah, blah, blah. No, I get what you're saying. And I 100% agree to some extent that since COVID, I think it's absolutely correct to start to question vaccines. I think it's totally valid to question if pets need all of the vaccines every single year. When I was at VCA in the early 2000s, we were one of the first places, myself and a couple of other younger vets, that started to try to implement the split antigen protocol, where we were stretching out the interval for vaccines so that they weren't getting every single vaccine every single year. Because at the time, Alice Wolf, she was one of the people starting the whole spreading it out, showing that vaccines definitely lasted longer than just a year, probably closer to 7. So they picked the middle ground and said 3. And so we started giving the rabies vaccine, year 3, distemper, parvo, distemper, hepatitis. The DHP vaccine was 1 year, and then the parvo vaccine was 1 year. And you would just alternate those. So 1 year you're getting rabies, 1 year you're getting DHP, and another year you're getting parvo. And that cycle would repeat. So every 3 years you were getting that one vaccine. Plus, there's the other vaccines that you can get. Now let's talk about what those are and why you might get them. But actually, before I get into that, let me say why. Yes, I agree that we don't need to vaccinate every year, but do I think that we still need to vaccinate? Yes. I think the proper way is puppies, kittens, give them their full puppy kitten booster series. But the reason that I think that we still need to do vaccines for sure as puppies is because watching a dog go through parvo, watching a puppy go through parvo is one of the worst. It's one of the worst things. Yes, I can usually save them, but it's not fun and it's going to cost a ton of money, and the poor puppy has to suffer through a ton. Some of them don't make it. So yeah, that's 100% preventable with a vaccine, 100%. Totally preventable. So that's one that is a no-brainer. Distemper, same thing. Watching a dog die from distemper is probably one of the most brutal things that I have ever had to endure. I adopted a dog from the shelter when I was in vet school. Her name was Sadie. She was the sweetest little dog. And I had her for maybe 3 months. And she had distemper. And I had to watch the progression from not eating to full-on seizures with absolutely zero treatments and nothing that I could do. There was zero hope. There's pretty much nothing you can do. I think maybe 10% of them survive, but she got neurologic and I had to put her to sleep. And that was before I was ever even a vet. So that was one of the worst things that I ever had to endure. And then seeing it as a vet with client animals, it's the same thing. It's horrible for something that's completely preventable. So distemper, parvo, no-brainers. And then for cats, panleukopenia It's basically the cat version of parvo, but I would say worse. Watching a cat get panleukopenia and see how sick they get, and pretty much a guaranteed death sentence. I think the survivability is maybe 90, it's like less than 10%, so 90% fatality if they get panleukopenia. And additionally, panleukopenia is super contagious. So once you get one cat getting it, it just spreads like crazy. So it's not a fun virus, and it's also 100% preventable. So those are no-brainers. So we can prevent those, cool, easy. So then when you're talking about the non-core vaccines, there's a bunch, but the main ones that we kind of lump in is going to be your kennel cough, Bordetella vaccine. You have to get that every year. If you get it intranasal, it's every 6 months, and that just has to do with the immunity. It just doesn't last that long. And that's really based on what your boarding place or your grooming place requires. We don't really get to dictate that. So if they require it, you have to get it, and it's safe. Yes, can some dogs have a little bit of a mild reaction from Bordetella? Yeah, but it's pretty self-limiting and pretty easy to treat. So Bordetella, and then for dogs, lepto. Actually, lepto's not really, it's considered core now, I think. Used to be non-core, but leptospirosis is a bacteria. It's not a fun infection for dogs to get. It affects the liver, the kidneys, makes them super sick. Vaccine's really protective. Dogs that go hunting, for sure, at risk. Dogs that are out by bayous, any place where there's rodents, wildlife, stuff like that. Those are going to be the dogs that are at risk. So hunting dogs, dogs that go run around the golf course, if there's ponds, bayous, things like that, they're definitely at risk. So I would go ahead and get that lepto vaccine. It is a more reactive vaccine, so you can have more reactions with lepto, but again, they're pretty self-limiting, and usually you can just pre-treat with Benadryl or counteract the reaction. So cost benefit, I think, still worth it. And leptospirosis is what's considered zoonotic, which means that if your dog gets it, they can actually give it to you, and you probably don't want leptospirosis. And then on the cat side, outdoor cats, leukemia for sure. If they're going to be around other cats, outdoor cats, if they're fighting, etc., you definitely want to get leukemia. Right now they say AFP recommends all cats get leukemia vaccine. Starting with their kittens, they get one, and then they get a booster. I don't do that if they're strictly an indoor cat. I'm not 100% sure that I understand the logic. If you know that your cat is going to be an indoor-only cat, and you know that it's leukemia negative, I'm not really sure the logic behind getting it. Get it because kittens are the most susceptible, but that vaccine is one of the ones that was more tied to vaccine-induced sarcomas. Not so much now. We use PureVax, which are a lot safer. So leukemia, I don't really use it a ton because most of the cats that I see are indoor only, but that is considered, it's not a core vaccine. That's every 3 to 4 weeks until they're 16 weeks of age. The reason for that is it has to do with maternal antibodies. We don't know for sure when those wear off. And so we're basically trying to time the vaccines so that we can basically get that vaccine to mount a good effective immune response as those maternal antibodies are wearing off, and then the vaccine antibodies are kicking in. And so that's happening somewhere in the 12 to 16 week range. So that's why that interval is in place. So you do that every 4 weeks until they're 16 weeks old. And then ideally, I would say at a year and 3 months, when they're due for their next round, go ahead and get those again. After that, I think depending on lifestyle, you could probably choose to go every 3 years. For dogs, I think every 3 years probably is not bad, but I will say that lately I've been doing a lot more titers. And we have I have a couple of dogs that I've been tracking. There's one dog that had his puppy series, and then he got a booster at 1 year. And we've been doing his titers. I think we're on year 6. And that dog still has protective titers after 6 years. So that's just after one set of boosters, and he's still protective after 6 years. Like good protection, pretty high titers. So that's pretty cool. So I would love to see more people be able to do titers. I think that would be great. The problem is cost. People don't want to spend the money that it would cost for the blood titers versus just doing the vaccine if we give them a choice. Plus, there's some debate about if the titers are valid for boarding facilities and grooming facilities, which is stupid. I think they should be. I think if I say that the dog is protected from titers, I think that boarding facility and that grooming facility should say, okay, he says he's protected, he's protected. But that's a whole nother thing. So yeah, titers are fantastic. I think they're probably going to be more popular coming up, and I think they're coming down in cost. So eventually we'll start to see them more, and there's going to be more practical in-clinic applications for vaccine titers. There's some. I don't think they're great yet, but they're getting there. I send mine out to Antec, and it's cost effective and it's very accurate, and I trust the results. But the bashing, the vet bashing, and then just people will say, oh, don't take your dogs to the vets because they're just trying to steal money from you. They're just trying to rip you off. They're just going to kill your dogs or whatever. That, it hurts. I'm not going to lie. When you see that stuff, it hits us in our gut because you guys don't understand what we do on a daily basis and what we have to deal with. We literally will have to go from a euthanasia for a dog that we've taken care of 14 years and then go straight into a room with a new puppy and try to act like we're happy. And it's hard. So yeah, that's legit. And that's not just a one-time thing. That's every single day. I'm having to put animals to sleep every day. And I hate it. I've been doing it for 25 years and it still kills me. The bashing of the industry is dangerous because obviously the suicide rate, but also just the misinformation, because what's going to happen is you're going to have all these people that hear that vets just want to steal money from you. They just want to rip you off. They just want to push these products on, which flea and heartworm are safe. Yes, NexGard, the isoxazolines. Is there some risk with dogs that have seizures? Yes. But especially here in Texas, I think the risk-benefit profile for keeping your dog on heartworm preventive is a no-brainer. You definitely don't want your dog to get heartworms. Fleas, you don't want fleas, and they're super easy to prevent. Anyway, all of that bashing and saying all of this stuff that's just not really true. Here's what's going to happen is you have to remember that, especially like with me, I'm super busy. I have a lot of clients, and other clinics, same way. If you eventually get to a point where your pet needs care, if it's sick or whatever, and you have not taken your dog to a vet because you were told not to, so you have no relationship with a vet, you have no relationship with a vet clinic, who do you think that vet clinic is going to choose to schedule an appointment or to see the pet? Is it going to be the person that they've never seen before that all of a sudden has a sick animal? Or is it going to be the person that's an established client that they know and that they've talked to and that they know takes care of their pet, does all the preventative care? Who do you think they're going to take care of? So you're hurting yourself by doing that. It's better if you have at least a relationship with your veterinarian, and you can tell them that you don't want to do a lot of vaccines. You can tell them that you don't necessarily want to do a lot of medications. I think most vets are going to be open to hearing that. Some may not agree. Some probably will. I think most will. They're going to be open to listening to you, especially if you have valid concerns. But the other thing that I think all of the bashing and stuff is doing is, and I saw this in the comments under that guy's video, it's making people not want to get into the profession or get out of the profession. And so they either go to part-time, they go to relief work, technicians are not coming in, kids growing up that thought, oh, I want to grow up to be a veterinarian, they're just not. So we're having a huge shortage already, and so if you chase away more of the potentially good ones, then it's going to get even worse in the industry. And I think they project that like 75% of millennials and Gen Z are going to own pets by 2030. 70%. That's a lot. And I don't think a lot of them are having kids. So it's going to be a lot of people with a lot of dogs and cats that they treat like their kids looking for clinics. And if all the clinics end up being just corporate owned or private equity owned, you guys are going to be screwed because their costs are going to be 5 times what mine are. In summary, maybe think twice before you guys post these nasty things about vets and about dog food and about vaccines. Do some research. Just maybe think twice. I'm a pet owner too, so I know what it's like to own a dog. I know what it's like to own a cat. I know what it's like to lose them. I've lost tons, and it sucks. It really does. And I truly believe that the vast majority of us want to do the right thing and help take care of your dogs and cats in the best possible way that we can. Are we always going to get it right? No, but we're just doing the best that we can. I don't think it warrants you guys attacking us and calling us greedy and saying that we're lying and saying that we're taking kickbacks from the pet food industry. Just remember that we are not the enemy. We are literally the ones that are there with you at the very last moments with your pet. We're helping put them to sleep. We're probably tearing up alongside you. But we're also the ones that are celebrating when your pets pull through from a big surgery, or if they've been sick and we've gotten them better, or they've responded well to treatment. You may not see it, but we are. So we're all working together. We're not the enemies against each other. So maybe if you see people bashing vets online, maybe just try to speak up a little bit. That's all. Take care, guys.